All right, you know something? I say we just start the call. So I want to thank everybody for coming to this webinar. This is Revelwood's overview of the IBM's Cloud Pak for data, and specifically how planning analytics fits into this. So before we get going, I'm going to start off with some housekeeping. We always get the same questions during the call. Will you be able to get a copy of the slides after the event? And is today's event being recorded? And the answer to both of those is yes. So if you need to refer back to this or want to share it with a colleague, you'll be able to do so. Also, during the presentation, we will be taking questions. You should be able to navigate to a Q&A window and put in your questions, and I will try to answer them before the end of the call. If I am not able to, if I don't have the time, I will follow up. Somebody at Revelwood will follow up with the answer for you. Okay, let me introduce myself. So I'm Rob Gordy. I am the Chief Technology Officer at Revelwood. I have been working with TM1 and planning analytics for about 30 years now. I would say the last, 4 or 5 years of planning analytics history, or TM1's history, I've seen more change in just those few years than I had in, let's say, the 15 prior years. Everything from planning analytics itself, planning analytics workspace, planning analytics for Excel, and now the Cloud Pak for data. All of these are coming at us at a very rapid pace. IBM obviously is investing a lot in planning analytics. That's all really good news, but it's sometimes hard to drink from that fire hose and keep up with it. So that is actually the purpose of this webinar. This is not a sales webinar. In fact, I'm definitely the wrong person at Revelwood to do that kind of webinar. I am a technologist at heart, and the purpose of this webinar is purely educational. My assumption, in terms of my audience, in terms of you, is that you currently use TM1 and/or planning analytics, and you understand that product well, whatever product you're using, and that you're either in the IT department and know technology very well or not. You might be a business user in operations or in finance, and you're just very familiar with planning analytics and want to know where it's going. Okay, I'm not assuming that you know anything about Cloud Pak or Cloud Pak for data, but I am guessing the reason you're attending this is that you've heard of it. You've heard it mentioned either through IBM or through Revelwood, and you're wondering what it's all about. So the purpose is to tell you, is to explain to you what it is, why it's important, give you a very brief technical overview, talk about planning analytics, how it fits in, and the state it's in today, and where it's going. And then I will summarize, give you some key takeaways, and open it up for questions. Let me give a very brief overview of Revelwood. Revelwood's been around for over 25 years. It's actually 26 years this month. We won many awards. We've been an IBM Planning Analytics partner since IBM purchased the product from Cognos, and Cognos purchased the product from Simper and the company that created TM1. So needless to say, over those 25 years, we have hundreds of successful implementations, and we have a very strong team of planning analytics consultants. Moving on. There we go. So let's start with what is Cloud Pak. As you know, the topic today is Cloud Pak for data, but there's a bigger question. What is Cloud Pak? And Cloud Pak for data is one piece of Cloud Pak. So Cloud Pak stems from IBM's $34 billion acquisition of Red Hat. One of the key parts of that acquisition, one of the reasons that IBM wanted to acquire Red Hat is because of their OpenShift technology. And I will explain what OpenShift is and why that technology is so important. But the purpose of Cloud Pak is that you're able to deploy a platform on which you can add functionality from the many, many applications that IBM provides. Okay. So first of all, deploying the platform, OpenShift is a very standard application. It is supported by all of the major cloud vendors, AWS, Google Cloud, Microsoft Azure, IBM's Cloud, etc. You can also install it locally in your own data center. Okay. And after you install that platform, you're able to easily add on these packages. And these packages cover broad functionality. It might be security, it might be cloud management, other applications, and of course, well, you can see Cloud Pak for data fits in the middle. Okay. On top of these Cloud Paks will be the interfaces. They might be anything from blockchain, which uses the Cloud Pak for integration and Cloud Pak for automation, analytics and AI, which uses Cloud Pak for data and some of the other Cloud Paks, et cetera. So the technologies can sit on top of these broad Cloud Paks. So the way IBM describes it, Cloud Pak for data is a hybrid cloud data and AI platform. So the hybrid part of it means that your data and various pieces of this solution can either reside in the cloud or in your own data center. The important piece here is that Cloud Pak for data provides one unified experience across the tool set. Okay, so it better aligns Cognos Analytics, Watson Studio, Planning Analytics, et cetera, into one platform. As I described just now, it does run almost anywhere, right? Not just IBM's cloud, but just about any public cloud. And it packages together these important pieces, such as Watson Studio, Cognos Analytics, ETL tools like Data Stage, and of course, Planning Analytics. So I'm going to continue, as you see throughout this presentation, I'm continuing to drill down further and further. So this should give you a better feel for what Cloud Pak for data is all about, what pieces are in it. So IBM's goal here is to provide the platform where you could collect your data, organize it, and then provide the tools for analysis and what they call infusing the data, which is getting it into a readable and easy to use format for your end users. So what's important is that all of this sits on top of one platform, Red Hat's OpenShift, with core services, everything from security to operations to managing to handling high availability, scalability, et cetera. And then you have these different modules, right? Different applications, but in the end, it should be one integrated user experience. Okay, so now, why is this really important? And this may take some of you back in history a bit, right? But 20 years ago, when I was installing TM1 for clients, I was installing it on a physical server. The client would buy, a new server that would fit into their data center, into their racks. At that time, we would decide how many CPUs, the RAM requirements, the disk, et cetera. It would all be packaged in that blade, in that server. And then we would install software and create the system for our clients. About 10 years ago, maybe a little more, that slowly gave way to virtual machines. So virtual machines are much more flexible, right? The concept of virtual machines, I'm sure most of you have heard of virtual machines or have used them, but it's this idea that If you have a data center, you can, in essence, combine all the CPU power, all the drive space, all the RAM, and basically divide it up the way you need to. So you would, in essence, take a single server and you would, on that server, you might have 16 or 32 CPUs and 256 gig of RAM, et cetera. And what you're going to do is you're going to divide it up. You're going to say, okay, somebody wants a new TM1 server or Planning Analytics server. We're going to give that 8 gig of RAM. We're going to give it 200 gig of hard disk space. And we'll give it 4 CPUs. Okay. And that would be dedicated to that server, right? That TM1 server. But if you needed to expand that, let's say you needed more RAM, you could basically do it on the fly, or at worst, you would shut down the server, add the RAM, and bring it back up without physically having to add the RAM. So there's a lot of flexibility there. Also allows you to move an entire server to, let's say, more powerful hardware very, very easily. So the advantages of virtual machines over physical are great and many. The same is true with what is happening today. So this is a movement that is not only IBM, although I will say IBM is absolutely one of the leaders here. And OpenShift and Red Hat, I would consider the leader in the containerization. IBM uses the term modernization of applications. So the idea here, well, I'll explain it on the next slide. Let's compare virtual machines to the way containers work. So a lot of you may have heard of containers. I'm guessing a lot of you have not. If you're a finance person, you may never even have heard of the term containers. But what it does is, what I described for you before was a virtual machine where a single machine, on that machine, you'd have to install the operating system. So on the physical box, you'd have the physical infrastructure, you'd have the host operating system, then you'd have something called a hypervisor, which is the thing that allows you to create the virtual machines. And then you would divide up your resources. You would divide up your RAM, divide up your CPU, your processors, and your hard disks, and create these virtual machines. And that's what you're seeing here, the green one, the orange one, and the red one. One of the disadvantages to this, first of all, is that you're dividing up your system, right? It's not very flexible. Second of all, if an environment goes down, then it's basically the same as if in the old world, as if that server crashed. Meaning it's not like it's going to automatically start using another server. You're going to have to deal with that server crashing. And as you'll see in a minute, containers allows you to do that kind of high availability and have that kind of high availability infrastructure. So the other thing is that the operating system, each one of these is a full operating system. Okay, Windows, Linux, what have you. It's the entire operating system. Now let's compare that to containers. The way containers work is you start off with that same infrastructure, right? So you might have that same computer. I threw out there, 32 CPUs and 256 gig of RAM and who knows how much hard drive space. But you have that same infrastructure. You'd have one operating system that controls it all. And then you'd have these containers, and the containers would be very lightweight, okay? They would have a certain amount of overhead, these bins and libs, but it's nothing compared to an entire operating system. What a container does is it uses the underlying operating system, okay? I once heard this described to me as, imagine that a virtual machine is like building houses in a development, right? So you're building a house. That house is going to have plumbing and electricity and obviously security and everything that you need to build a house, right? A container is much more like an apartment complex. So each container is self-contained. It has security. The same way you have security, you have locks on the door of your apartment. It's very similar to that. But it shares common plumbing, common electricity for the whole building. I found that to be a very good analogy. And one of the capabilities of OpenShift in particular is that it allows for that high availability and scalability. So when you ramp up, when you start a container, you could actually start 4 of them or 5 of them or however many you need. So imagine that you want to create a web server that is highly available, right? You don't want to just have everybody pointing to the same web service, trying to listen for every web request. Instead, you want to have multiple of them. And if, let's say, you have something that goes viral and out of nowhere, you don't need 5 web servers, you need 50, you want to be able to push a button and get 50. And OpenHat allows you to do that by replicating these containers. All right, so here's a bit of a cheat sheet for you. Let's go through what all these terms that I've been rattling off, what they are. So I mentioned containers. By the way, the organization that created the original containers is an organization called Docker. So a lot of times it would be referred to as Docker containers. So that's what I just described to you. Kubernetes is in essence built off of that, and it is this concept of it being scalable. OpenShift is IBM's, Red Hat's version of Kubernetes with all the management tools and other infrastructure that is needed to have a scalable platform work properly. So OpenShift, as you've seen in other slides that I've shown, is the platform underneath everything. Then you have Cloud Pak, which I described as a set of these containers, right? These applications that will address some specific need. And then there's something that I haven't mentioned before. It's called a cartridge. And these two terms, Cloud Pak and cartridge, are IBM's terms. So you have a Cloud Pak, this group of applications from IBM, and a cartridge would be, in essence, an add-on to it, right? So the Cloud Pak for data has some set of basic functionality, but then you add on to it with Cognos Analytics or Planning Analytics, et cetera. All right, there's a lot just to Cloud Pak for data, okay? So this slide only shows Cloud Pak for data, and all of this is part of that, either as a cartridge or part of the base, okay? So remember, it's all sitting on a single platform managed by OpenShift. That includes an entire level of security and data protection and governance, right? So you're able to understand what applications are using what resources, et cetera. And then within Cloud Pak for data, you have everything from certain data sources or ability to acquire that data if it's external, and then ETL tools for ingesting that data, managing the data, and creating access to the data via APIs or one very important technology that IBM has pushed is something called data virtualization, right? It allows your applications to not worry where the data is coming from. Applications should not worry about whether it's pulling data from SQL Server or DB2 or some public API, cloud API, et cetera. That should all be virtualized, and to the program like Cognos Analytics, it should just be able to talk to what the virtualization front end is giving it. And then finally, the question is, where does Planning Analytics fit in all this? I don't know if any of you have seen it. It's kind of a Where's Waldo here, but right there is Planning Analytics. If some of you are people who are really familiar with Planning Analytics and that's your vision of IBM. It is, to be honest, one small part of this much bigger picture. All right, I'm finally at the point where I'm talking about what is this PA cartridge? What is this Planning Analytics add-on or piece of Cloud Pak for Data? So what it is if you're familiar with Planning Analytics is broken down into the database itself, TM1 Web, and Planning Analytics Workspace. And then you have a few front ends like Planning Analytics Excel and the web front end, et cetera. Okay, but from a server point of view, it's three pieces: TM1 Database Server, TM1 Web, and Planning Analytics Workspace Server. So what you get in Cloud Pak for Data, in this cartridge, is you get them all built into a single platform, okay? And that is what I'm referring to here as option one, right? Where everything is all together, the TM1 database, TM1 Web, and PA Workspace. Now, this is, I will tell you, the very first version of it, right? So you know that TM1's been out there forever. Planning Analytics Workspace has been out there for years now, but this is the first time that it's all put together into these containers. So what does that mean? It means that it doesn't have everything. And in particular, what it doesn't have is that the TM1 server, it is, right now you could only have one TM1 server in this setup. That is a problem for most of our clients, right? Because most of our clients will at the very least have a production and a development server, okay? So with this limitation being so severe, IBM created the ability for this to be a hybrid environment. What they mean by that is that Planning Analytics Workspace would be part of Cloud Pak for Data, but you would create a separate normal server with TM1, with as many servers as you want within that, and TM1 Web. So I'm hoping for most of you that makes sense in terms of your current architecture. All right. So other limitations in the current version, I talked about scalability, right, and how important it is. Right now, they actually hard-coded that scalability. They said, okay, we're going to have 3, not 2, not 4. We're going to have exactly 3 PAW nodes. And TM1 Web right now is only 1 node. And as I said, the TM1 server can only be 1 node. Okay? But that's not where it's going to stay. So let's talk about where this is going. I want to stress this is unofficial. I don't work for IBM. I've just heard IBM presentations on this. This is the direction they're going. So number one, they want to put all the latest features of PAW into Cloud Pak for Data. The original one had an older version of PAW. So if you're familiar with all the new features that came out in PAW, including predictive capabilities, et cetera, that's either in or will very soon be in Cloud Pak for Data. They're going to turn on the scaling for the PAW and TM1 Web components. They will improve the data integration, okay? And we'll talk about that in a minute. And then finally, they will, by the end of the year, it sounds, they will allow for multiple TM1 servers. And that will be a big, big improvement and a big shift. All right. So coming towards the end, what are the key takeaways for you? Number one, I hope you gathered that containers truly are the future of computing. I expect 5 to 10 years from now, we'll be looking at containers the same way we look at virtual machines today, meaning it's just how you do business. And Cloud Pak for Data is the future of planning analytics. They are referring to the TM1 engine in Cloud Pak for Data as the version 12 engine. Planning Analytics 2.x is the version 11 engine. So think of it as where it is going. There is no end of life statement yet for version 11. So don't worry about that at the moment. But you do have to start thinking as IBM puts money into planning analytics, they will be putting it into Cloud Pak for Data. This can require a significant effort in learning about everything that I just talked about. IBM has made it somewhat easier by, number one, working with all these cloud hosting environments. And so OpenShift is kind of easy to ramp up in all of these cloud environments like AWS, et cetera. The other thing that IBM just created is, in essence, Cloud Pak for Data in a box, where you buy the physical hardware and it has everything already set up. I'm going to say that I think that Planning Analytics cartridge really is not ready for most environments, but it should be on your roadmap. Okay, you should be thinking about this. So why would you go? Why is it important right now? Well, first of all, if you use a lot of other IBM tools, this idea of that smoother integration is probably a big win and might be worth the hassle of dealing with a somewhat restricted planning analytics. The other thing I want to mention here, this idea of ODBC connections, that's near and dear to a lot of people, right? Having Turbo Integrator talk directly to, let's say, your SQL server. But I talked about before, IBM's direction is to virtualize that. So at the moment, there is not an immediate plan to add ODBC direct connections to Cloud Pak for Data. The way it would work would be Planning Analytics would talk to the data virtualization engine, which would then talk to whatever data source you need. And my final point is about licensing. So the licensing right now for Cloud Pak for Data includes your ability to install PA local. So if there are incentives that are pointing you to Cloud Pak for Data, in terms of your renewal or in anything, if you're expanding your footprint and there's a suggestion to go to Cloud Pak for Data, fear not, you will be able to just install PA today as you already do. Okay, but it'll also let you try out Cloud Pak for Data. So I have to apologize. I went the full time, so I'm afraid I'm not going to have time for live questions. We will have to take them offline. So let me just finish by saying that in terms of contacting us, I suggest that you reach out to Revelwood's Client Success Manager. Most of you may, or at least some of you know him already, John Persisto. He will be able to either answer your questions directly or pull myself or any of the other Planning Analytics consulting members, team members, in to help you. So with that, I want to thank you all for attending this webinar, and I hope you have a very good afternoon, remainder of your day, and I hope to hear from you soon. Bye all.